Hey guys, Danish here. Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to discuss a game that's near and dear to my heart, or rather a franchise, Destiny. And coming up, Destiny 2 is looking to be a good release, but I do have some concerns and some good things to say. Of course, the game's not out quite yet, but the beta was live about 2 weeks ago, and I did get my hands on that for a couple hours in there, mostly PvE. So everything I'm going to discuss today is going to be PvE oriented. And hopefully there's some things you can agree on, maybe disagree on. If you have anything that you want to add, put into their comment section down below. Well, let's start off with things that I actually enjoyed about the beta, and of course its looks. The game is gorgeous. The areas are nice and they're very floriated, and I mean just everything about it reminds me of Destiny 1, but more. I mean, if you didn't like the way Destiny 1 looked, you're not gonna like this game. But if you did, this game is exactly what you're looking for. They didn't do anything major, mind you. It's some small graphical upgrades, frame rates, things like that. Especially if you're on PC, you're going to have a much more beautiful experience, which we haven't seen any gameplay from that yet, but it's looking good. Next thing that's really a highlight of the game, especially the PvE in the beta, was definitely the gameplay. Everything felt like Destiny. It didn't feel like a new game. It didn't feel like they changed the IP or did anything extreme. It's definitely Destiny. It feels the same. It feels like it could have been an expansion on the first game, honestly. Coming to the next thing that kind of changes up gameplay, the new guns. Everything about the new guns is fucking amazing, and I absolutely love it. I love the SMGs. I love the sidearms and the hand cannons. How everything feels. The grenade launcher. I wish we could have seen some swords. We haven't seen that yet, but they're supposed to be in the game, mind you. But everything plays well and it feels right. It just feels really, really good. Another thing, the strike that they showed, since it was kind of the only PvE thing, and it was the main thing I focused on, minus like the first story mission, is great. It flows wonderfully, and it's really cool. It's just a really cool strike. I love the Vex personally, and I think that's a good thing to show off, even though the game's supposed to be Cabal centered. It just feels like a good way to show off what they can do with the strike. It definitely had some more immersive parts than strikes from Destiny 1. If you remember vanilla Destiny, a lot of the strikes were just go in, kill a boss, and that's it. There was nothing special, there was nothing cool to see. This particular strike took you through a bunch of really cool areas in just one planet. I mean, you got to see like the Vex Milk Waterfall, the drill, the final boss battle arena. That drops to 3 different places. That's amazing. That's something that Destiny 1 just doesn't do in the same way. And it's really cool, and I'm glad that's something that they're actually focusing on this time around. The next thing that I really like is the future of PvE, and it's looking really good. The strikes, patrols, everything looks fantastic, and even raids. If they keep the mechanics of what they're putting into things that we've already seen, it's going to be fantastic, and I'm really excited, and it's going to look very immersive. Alright, next up on our list, we got neutral things that I'm not totally sure about, that we haven't seen enough of, and that I want more information before I really make an opinion. Starting off, the new gun changes and the way that our inventories work. We don't have secondaries anymore. We have 2 primaries and a heavy weapon. So what that means is that the whole way that we handle situations in, like, let's say a raid environment, if you remember Vostok, with a lot of DPS necessary for, the amount of waves you have to do, especially if you're doing challenge mode, that changes that changes everything. How raids can be scaled, especially with health pools on bosses. I mean, it opens up from a variety necessarily, like maybe more mechanical based, similar to like Crota. But when it comes to pure DPS, it seems to be like this. It'll change Elite's health pools, and mind you that the beta only had up to like level 20, and the weapons were capped at a very particular like light level and everything. So things could change in the final game. But as it stands with the beta, it looks to be like a neutral point, like whether the gun economy is a good idea or not. Me personally, I do miss having secondaries. Like a sniper rifle is something I absolutely enjoy in the game, but the more we play, the better it might become. Another thing on my list for neutral things is definitely the raid. I was concerned about how it's going to play with the way that they've changed a lot of the characters and stuff, like getting rid of the bubble titan, that offender titan. Getting rid of that is kind of a staple for most Destiny 1 activities, and you wouldn't think about it unless you've went back and started to think how many times you sat in a bubble to get extra damage to beat a boss. Things like pretty much all the way through Wrath of the Machines, it's extremely useful to have a bubble. Even boss battles, like even Crota's End, it's nice to have a bubble every once in a while. So we'll have to see how the raids play out with these changes. I assume that they can definitely make a good raid with the mechanics that they have, and they've already shown that they can do great with raids, so that's why it's my neutral list. Last thing on it is just the depth of exploration. They put a big emphasis this time around that the world is going to be big, explorable, unique, interesting. but I wonder how much it's actually going to be, considering how much we've seen. It seems to be a lot, but the depth of it and the replayability. Once you've searched the whole planet, is it worth searching it again? They've stated that the loot will have changing pools and that there's going to be special events that kind of happen once a week that are going to be in these areas, like on a certain planet and things. So the replayability thing might be there, but hopefully it has good enough gear that's in-game loot that makes people come back, and it has a good scaling too. We want difficult things as well, not just things that repeat. Alright, on to the final part of this list, the dislikes, things I don't like, things that I'm not happy with, and I hope in the final game they will fix. The state of hunters. It's rough. It's not a fun experience. Right now, it seems to me, when I was playing the beta, the hunters are the weakest class for team play. Absolutely the weakest class. And it mostly comes down to the third ability, the dodge roll. You can either get it to roll where, like, if you dodge, you get a full reload on your whatever weapon you're holding out, or if you roll near enemies, you can get some grenade and melee energy back. The problem with that is it's simply not team-oriented. Things like the Titans have 2 different types of shields that benefit the team, and then the Warlocks have 2 rifts that either heal you or give you more damage. You can't compete with that as a hunter, and that's something that's really concerning. It's gonna make team comps, if they don't change it before the game releases, definitely leaning more towards those 2 classes. Now, I'm not saying hunters are underpowered. I'm not saying that hunters aren't good. But when it comes to who I want in my raid team as a hunter main, I have a feeling that if I was to LFG, it's going to be similar to Destiny 1 before the Night Stalker came out, and it was just all the time. It was just you just want Titans and you just want Warlocks for the reses and the bubbles. But even now, there's already going to be a new dynamic. It's going to be a Titan putting down a shield inside the rift of a Warlock, depending on what you need, like healing or damage boosting, and that's going to be the main thing. Hunters have nothing to give for the team, and that's a big deal. I will say Gunslingers have the Gunslingers trans that now translates to the team that's near them, and that's fantastic. That's a great change, but that's the only thing that really helps the team in a direct way, and that's concerning for team play. I was really hoping for Destiny 2 to hit home on dynamics of teams and really getting synergies going, and unfortunately it seems that Hunters are left out of that synergy. Another issue that I have with Destiny 2, and it's something that I'm going to put on my list here, I haven't quite written it down, but I don't like the loss of choices in this game. It seems that we've narrowed down everything. Our subclasses have way less nodes, and you don't even get to choose out of the 8 nodes that are there. You have to pick a stack of 4 of them, and it just seems there's just a loss of diversity. Now, we don't know what exotics are going to play into in terms of like builds and things, but it seems to me, as of right now, that it's going to be less interesting. It's going to be less diversity. Like, I remember seeing interesting builds for Blade Dancers in Destiny 1 that would take advantage of Khepri stings, and like it'd be invisibility, all melee behind people's backs, one-shot melees in multiplayer. And it wasn't anything near mainstream, but it was an interesting build, interesting enough to where I was extremely happy to see it. And it's just, things like that are gone now. It seems to, unless exotics are something crazy and it would actually change things up, diversity in the subclasses seems to be gone. And on the final thing on my dislikes is going to be, I don't like exotics. They continuously state that they don't want exotics to be the powerfulest guns in the game, and I don't like that. I think exotics, in my mind, should be the most rare, the most interesting, and the most powerful, at least in PvE. Everything that I talked about today is mostly PvE stated because I enjoy that part of the game far more than I like PvP. But it just seems that exotics are just not in a place where I want them to be personally. It looks like they're just kind of, they do, in the way they want them to be, they just have a unique ability, but they're not going to be great. And that's an issue because if they're not good, exotics that are good are going to overshine the ones that are unique. I think a great example is the Super Good Advice. That was my first exotic in Destiny 1. I may have used it for a few hours when I first got it, and then I realized how bad it was, and I've never touched it for anything realistic. It had 2 uses, and that was it. It was in for one phase of VOG, and Crota's in if you were bad at, like, keeping your team alive, and that's it. The only 2 places that was ever useful, and that's even mildly speaking. They were only, seldom uses, seldom things in the events. I don't want exotics to be like that. I want them to be strong. I think a great example of good exotics are things like Icebreaker, Yellowhorn, Thorn, before it was nerfed heavily. Things that actually are really, really good and have uses. Especially in the PvE environment, because it seems to be that they're scaling for things that definitely focused on balancing both parts of the game, which is fine, but they should really separate them so that these weapons, especially the underused exotics, things like the Chaperone in PvE, can really shine and have a good place. And now the exotics that they showed, like the hand cannon, the SMG, and the assault rifle, I believe is what it is, or a chain gun, really. Those were really cool, and definitely I think the hand cannon or the SMG were by far the best, depending on how you want to play. But they felt good. They felt like guns that I would actually use at some point in the game. But what concerns me is that, they're focusing on one tiny little adjustment to make them exotic. It's gonna be an interesting choice between a bunch of exotics that I just don't want to use, and that will sit in my vault unless they bring back the kiosk system. It's just gonna seem like I'm gonna have a lot of exotics again. I'm just never gonna use, except for seldom, for funsies things. And that should finish up this list. Again, this is a different type of video from what I normally do, and I just thought I would produce it because I was really interested in Destiny 2, and I still am, of course. I have it pre-ordered and everything, and I'm gonna have tons of gameplay when it actually fully comes out. But I just had to have 2 weeks to really get my thoughts together and make sure that I was explaining things well. Some new things have come out since then, some news articles and things, and kind of explaining their choices and things. And so I want to take this into consideration before I spoke about anything. But that should do it for the video, and Danish out.